I scrapped the entire first draft of my novel, all 25,000 words, down the drain. And spoiler alert, it was the best decision I could have ever made for my writing process. It all started about a month ago. It was a typical day. I was in the middle of my typical morning routine, journaling, reading, meditating, working out. And when I sat down to write, I just knew something's not right. Oh my God. And that same day, I decided to start over. First things first, let me tell you a little bit about the book itself. So it's a fiction romance going under the alias Tide. So when I talk about it, when we talk about it, we're gonna call it Tide. I have been developing Tide for over a year now, and it is a story following a young woman named Rowan. It takes place in New York City, but there's a lot of traveling that goes on, and her love interest's name is Miles. They are friends to lovers, childhood friends to lovers, if you will, but mostly the bulk of this story is a romance. Of course, there's a whole overarching plot that I just can't really mention, and a bunch of subplots and other little characters and all of that, but all that you really need to know is that it's a romance, it takes place in New York City, we have Rowan and Miles, and they are friends who end up becoming lovers. And like I mentioned, I have been developing it for over a year now. I had the idea back when I was living in London doing my master's in creative writing, and as soon as this idea came into my mind, I was like, that's the book. That is the book I'm going to write. That is the one that's getting published. I've had so many other ideas before in my life, and I've tried to work on them, but none of them have really stuck and felt like the story I needed to tell. But this one does. Tide feels like the story I need to tell. So I've been working on this for a very long time now, and I very much do consider this my little baby, and I have a lot of faith, trust, and hope in her to become this beautiful book that I want it to be. However, she did cause me some problems. And yeah, I did have to start her over, so. Basically, I was just deeply confused. I didn't know where my story was going. I had the idea, I had the full circle. I knew where it started and I knew where it ended, but I didn't know how I was getting there, and that was my biggest issue. The first 10, 15, even 20,000 words, I was solid. I knew what was going on. I knew exactly what the purpose of each scene was. But once I started getting around like the 20,000, 25,000 word count, I just didn't know what was happening. I didn't know where I was going. It felt like I was writing scenes with no purpose, and that was just a waste of time. At the end of the day, every scene in the book needs to have a reason. There has to be a reason why A is happening in order to get to B. And my A and B, they just weren't clicking. As I was reading it, it felt like a bunch of scenes that didn't really transition into one another. They were just ideas that I had that I was just stating in the chapter, just like boom, 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 put it out. And I do recognize some of that could have been fixed in editing rather than just deleting the entire thing, but ultimately it just felt like I couldn't get to the rest of the book without having figured out the part that I was stuck on, and I was just having a really hard time getting through it. I was spending weeks on the same scene, on the same chapter, and again, it just felt like I was wasting my time trying to write this without a clear vision. And partially this is my fault. I don't like making outlines. I never have, I never will, but I do strongly believe in, and especially after this experience, I 100% understand and believe in at least having some sort of plan, at least having mapped out every single chapter and knowing what your key points are to hit each point. Because if I had had that, then I wouldn't have been so confused. I wouldn't have been sitting here for weeks trying to figure out why this one little action that I have the character doing is messing up what needs to happen next. And I didn't even know what needed to happen next. I just felt deep down that I wasn't writing the story how it was meant to be written. And that was a powerful feeling that really took over. And at first I felt very, what's the right word? Because it's not ashamed. I just felt very down about it. I felt like, wow, I just wasted so much time on this, or wow, maybe I'm not cut out to do this. But then I screwed my head back on. I was like, come on girl, get it together. Like, you are a writer, you're meant to be doing this, you are confident in this story. You just need to have a better plan next time. You need to go about this in a different way. So the overall plot is the same, the characters are the same, the settings are the same, the whole entire idea is still the same. I am still keeping the essence and core purpose of the story there. There's just a different vibe now going on. I'm more prepared. I actually know what's going on. I feel more confident in even the tone that I'm writing in. So I would say it served me well to start over. But yes, at the end of the day, I had to start over because of my own wrongdoings or my own misstep in the writing process, which was not having a clear plan and not fully understanding the entire story because I only knew the beginning and the end. I didn't have the middle, and that's what really got me. I have no clue how or why it started happening, but the minute I started my new doc, it was like the floodgates just opened up and I was magically able to write so much, like right out the gate. Prior to starting a new one, I was probably averaging like 200 to 500 words a day, which at the time I felt very proud of myself. But looking back, I'm like, damn girl, you were not really getting it done. Like you were really stuck. And I felt stuck, but I didn't realize how stuck I was till now when I'm able to write and I'm pumping out like 1,000 to 3,000 words a day. Like now I have a lot of momentum and I'm really getting it going. One of the major things that starting a new draft changed for me is the whole meet cute that my characters have. Originally, Miles and Rowan were meeting for the first time within like the first couple chapters of the book. Like this was their first interaction. They met on the street, bumped into each other. The idea was it's New Year's, Rowan is leaving the club early and she can't afford to get a regular Uber home because they're just like so expensive. So she's outside waiting for the prices to go down, or she's thinking about getting a shared Uber. And here comes Miles. He just like stumbles up next to her and he's very charismatic and open and talkative and a little sarcastic and just very on a different vibe than what she's on because of what happened when she was in the club. And that's the part I won't tell you about. But that was their original meeting. It was very spontaneous, very like, oh my God, there you are. And for no other reason than for the fact that I needed them to get together and start talking to one another, they spark a conversation and then their night goes on. And in the moment while I was writing it, I was like, oh my God, this is so good. Like, yeah, people are gonna love this. And then I really took a moment to sit back and I was rereading that original draft and I was like, okay, this makes absolutely no sense. Why on earth would a woman just go with this random man that she met on the side of the street that she has no prior knowledge of, no mutual friends, no Instagram followers, like he was alone, she was alone. Why would she ever go with him? And that's when it dawned in my head that I was like, yeah, this cannot be the first time they meet. They have to have known each other already. Which brings me to my new plot point, which is Rowan and Miles went to school together and they grew up together. They know each other. They weren't close friends, or really even in the same friend group, but they know of each other. And that way it just makes it a little more realistic that she would go with him. It also allows me to add some depth to their characters and talk about their childhoods and their upbringing and just gives them more depth, because if we're only meeting Miles and Rowan right here, right at this moment, everything that she learns about him is just from what he's told her. But when you have someone who you've grown up with and you went to school with, you know these random little things about them. You know what subjects they're good at. You know if they raise their hand or not in class. They're just these random little things. You know what sports they played. And there's less need to have all that exposition and explain all of that, whether it be through like dialogue or I don't know. I don't even know how I would have showed it. Maybe like a memory book that Rowan gets to go through at some point. But the point is, by starting over, I was able to rework their meeting and just make it make way more sense, and it saved me a lot of time, because I'm sure this would have come up at some point, whether it be with myself during editing or maybe with an agent or a publisher. Maybe they would have said like, hey, let's rework this. Doesn't really work. So I'm glad I did that. And in that same breath, this was again me trying to get Rowan and Miles close to one another and make it make sense for why they're going to go on the journey that they're going to go on. I was originally having Miles and Rowan sleep together the first night that they met. For one, I thought it added shock value. I thought it would draw readers in right away if within the first like 12 pages they were like automatically like getting it going. Like I thought that would be very interesting. And again, it would make sense why she then would go along with him. But then I started thinking about what all of the like silent undertones were of her and him getting together on that first night and then them going on this journey. And it just made it a little more messy and a little more complicated than I wanted it to be or needed it to be. I also didn't want to have that sexual act looming over them through every single scene. Like I want there to be tension. I want to rev it up. I don't necessarily intend for this to be a slow burn, but if the characters already get to it, oh my God, I was about to say if they get to Pound Town, but I don't know if that's gonna demonetize me. If the characters already have gotten to it within the first like 12 pages, like what is there left to do? Yes, we can develop their emotional relationship, but that level of intimacy has already been cracked. And I just don't want to mess with that. I don't want to think about what all of the like subtle undertones mean that, you know, she trusted him physically, but not emotionally. I don't know. It just didn't make sense. So again, now I no longer have that. I took that out and I just made them friends. Like I made them people who know each other, people who are at least on a first name basis. They know each other's family dynamics. There's not too much mystery there. And no, I don't have them hooking up on the first night. They will hook up eventually because it is a love story, but not on the first night. I will save that a little bit, let there be some mystery around what's going on with her and why this is happening. I also slightly tweaked the tone. It was a little too depressing for my liking. The first draft it very much had a huge dark cloud over every single scene, over every piece of dialogue, over every memory that Rowan was having. It was just very depressing. And while yes, there is a depressing element to it and it does need to have some sort of sadness to it, I don't think it needs to be the entire story. And I think by only focusing on this feeling that I was trying to convey through the words, I was missing a really central theme that still needs to be who Rowan is outside of this sadness and outside of the challenge that she's facing. There was a lot of great things in her life before it. There's a lot of great things in her life after it. And I don't want to lose the beginning and end because I'm too focused on just exactly what's going on right then and there. So I slightly tweaked it just to be a little more happy, to have a little bit of a more like positive spin on it. And I also wanted to play around with how the narrator interacts with the audience. It's told in first person, it's told through Rowan's lens. And there's just like certain parts of this where, let me see where I could find it, where I have her directly talking to the reader. I almost want it to flow like the reader and Rowan are sitting in a room together and she's just casually having this conversation. And it does break some of the rules of literature where it says, you know, like, don't say this, don't put that, don't break this wall, but I'm gonna break the wall. I think it adds so much to it, especially given the contents of this story. It just hits a little more deeper when you really feel like you're sitting there with her having this conversation. I really want to find a section I can read to you that won't like give too much away, but that will explain what I'm trying to say. Okay, I found it. All right, so in this section, Rowan is talking she's talking very negatively about this experience that she has had many times before, and she's speaking negatively about it, but it isn't necessarily a negative experience or something that should be looked at that way. She's only seeing it like that because of where she's at in life and in this point of the story. Something I really believe in is we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. And I really wanted that to come through here. So even though what Rowan is talking about is not what is actually happening, this is just how she's seeing it. So she was being very negative about the experience. And then she goes, "Let me be clear to say, while I was living in those moments as a 20-something-year-old, hopeful and excited, blah, blah, blah," that's a spoiler, but just the point where she says, "let me be clear to say," rather than it just being a story that the audience is observing and seeing as it's unfolding, I want it to be something that the reader's a part of, and adding a little thing like that in, to me, really helps. I want to try to find one more section, but like so much of it is in parts that would be total spoilers that I just can't say. Okay. Another example, I waved first, realizing Miles didn't notice me or recognize me, but I'm thinking it's notice because I had not changed that much since he'd last seen me. It's the part where she says, "or recognize me," like question mark, like, wait, I tried to wave to him, but he didn't notice me. But I don't know if it's because he didn't notice or he didn't recognize, and that I'm not sure about. I just want to give Rowan a very clear and honest voice, and I want that to linger throughout the entire story and be very prominent. Like, this is Rowan's story that she is telling to you flat out, straight out, as she remembers it, as she knows it to be. And for that alone, the tone switch and making sure that I'm incorporating Rowan's unique singular voice into this has already made starting over way more worth it than I could have ever imagined, because it's completely transformed the way the story reads, the way that it's taken, like it's changed so much of the story. The first draft was very flat, very Like, I don't want to talk too bad about it because like I did work very hard on it, but it was just missing something, and it's these little tweaks that it was missing. And I'm so glad I figured that out right now rather than getting to the end of my entire first draft and going into editing and realizing like, oh shit, there was so much more I could have done, or damn, I have a whole story now that I need to change. Like, let's say I didn't end up changing the whole Miles and Rowan meet cute. And then imagine in editing, when I start thinking to myself, wait, this doesn't really make sense, I would have had to go back and change the entire story because everything would have changed. Their conversations, the way they interact with each other, how things go, like the vibe, like it all would have changed. So I am just so thankful and grateful, thank you, that I just made the choice to start over and was able to figure out all these different things about my story. A piece of writing advice that floats around the internet all the time is you can't write anything great until you write something bad. And the purpose of the advice is just to keep encouraging writers to keep writing and to continue developing even if they feel like what they're doing isn't the best thing ever, and to just give writers the freedom and space to write something bad sometimes. And I mean, no one wants to write anything bad, and it can feel like a lot of pressure when you don't love what you're writing. But I just love that little piece of advice because it really feels reminiscent of what happened to me with this first draft. It was bad. It was bad. It was not what I wanted it to be. And part of the reason why I kept getting so stuck and frustrated and spending weeks on one little scene was because it just didn't feel right. And I was a little bit disappointed because I'm like, damn, this is like not what it's supposed to be. Like, I have so much potential that I just can't get to, and I've only been able to get to it now. And also, let me also say, like, I know I have so much more to go with writing this first draft, but I've only been able to crack the code and get these little pieces of it that is making my story feel so unique because I wrote something bad. So I also will add, if you are a writer and not loving your first draft, it is so okay. It is so okay. You can start over or not if you don't want to, but you should always know it is an option. And when I say start over, I do not mean you need to delete the entire thing. I just mean start a new one. No way was I deleting 25,000 words. I just started a new draft. And even every now and then I will go back to my old one, see what I did there, see what I didn't like, and then put it into the new one. But it really is true, you can't get to the good stuff until you write the bad stuff. So this also can encourage writers just to like put some quantity behind their work, like quantity over quality, especially at the beginning. Just write as much as you can, pump out as much as you can, keep going, keep working on it, and you will get to the good stuff, but you definitely have to sort through all the bad stuff. With this new draft, I am at 8,868 words. Yay! Which feels like a huge accomplishment, mostly because this is 8,868 words that I genuinely feel proud of, that I sit here and read back and I'm like, okay, Maya, like you did that damn thing. Like, these feel like the words that will actually make it into the book. And I know I have a whole editing process to do. I know it's gonna change and there'll be things that don't make it in, but these words feel like a really good launching pad to get off of. And this is why I say starting over was the best thing I could have ever done for my writing process, because I feel very reinvigorated. I feel reinvigorate. I want to say it. Why can't I say it? Reinvigorated. I feel good. That's all I'm trying to say. I feel good. I feel confident. I feel like I am on the right track. I also wonder if starting over was necessary for me because I had lived so long in this story under the guise of being in school. Like I said earlier, I started this a year ago in London, in school, all day, every day. All I was doing was reading and writing. I would go to class, then I would go and sit in the little like cafe area and I would just write, and I was very consumed and wrapped up in it. So much so that I didn't even really have the reflection to like go back and say like, oh wait, I don't really like that, or like that tone doesn't really work, or maybe this meet cute isn't happening. I didn't have the time or space to be able to ask myself those questions and figure that out because I was on these strict deadlines and trying to get things in on time to get a grade and graduate and pass and all of that. But now that I've done it, now that that's in the past, I can just focus on this. And I do have my own personal timeline for myself, but at the end of the day, it can change. Starting over has been amazing for me. And I will be telling this to everyone. If you feel stagnant, if you feel like you need to start over, if you feel like there is just something that's not working, do not be afraid to try again. Don't be afraid to start over. Again, don't delete it, just start a new draft, but don't be afraid to do it because you never know what you're gonna find. You never know how the characters will speak to you differently. You never know what setting's gonna pop up or what like emotion and style and tone and all of that is gonna come out. You never know. And that's why it's such a beautiful thing to trust yourself and trust your intuition and trust your gut when it tells you like, hey, maybe this is not working. Maybe you need to try something else. And with that, this is where I leave you. I'm gonna keep writing. I'm gonna keep doing my thing. And if you're also a writer and you've started over, let me know what that experience was like for you. I am curious to know if it helped you, if it didn't help you. Let me know if you regret it, all of that. And in general, if you are working on your first draft or just writing anything, great job. I'm so proud of you. Give yourself a round of applause because it's a huge deal just to even have the idea and go after it. I hope you enjoyed. More videos are on the way, all about my writing process, books I'm reading, all of that good stuff. I will see you very soon for a brand new video. Bye!